And there it is. The red light is on. That means we're live. What's going on, guys? Welcome again, the MMA Minute Show. Back-to-back weeks live, so we made it this far. We're trying to keep this going forward every Wednesday, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And today we are doing the UFC Vegas 79 breakdown. We'll go through the entire card, give you guys my predictions, sprinkle a couple of best bets. We'll do a couple of cash giveaways to anybody who is hanging out in the live chat. So we'll give some time for those guys to get in here because 8 o'clock sharp, but people will roll in a little bit later. But if you're here just for the breakdowns, just checking out the picks, timestamps are going to be below in the description. Otherwise, we are just kind of hanging out, probably going to talk a little bit of Noche UFC if people want to get into that. Could go anywhere 5 to 10 minutes. Then we'll try to get into UFC Vegas 79 and get through the entire card. So, yeah, that's where we're at right now. If you guys do want to check out some premium content on the page, I do have a Patreon where you're going to get these full card predictions. You're going to see these confidence levels. I have a full betting guide. There is an early line tracker on there, and you're going to have access to betting splits. So there is really just a lot of tools that can be used in the premium content. That is in the Patreon, which is link in the description below. Make sure to check that out. And we got Joey in the comments as usual. What's going on, my guy? I was thinking we'd talk a little bit of UFC Noche UFC, because there was some controversy to be had. Really 3 fights that stood out to me. The biggest, absolutely, was in the main event, Shevchenko taking on Grasso in the rematch. Couple things. People seem to think that Grasso won round 4. Personally, I had scored that for Shevchenko. So let's see. I had Shevchenko winning 1, 3, and 4, and she was on her way to winning round 5. But towards the end of it, you definitely have to give it to Grasso. But that 10-8 scorecard by Mike Bell, that is what everybody is talking about right now. That was absolutely egregious. Probably one of the worst scoring rounds I've ever seen, to give a 10-8 in that round where Shevchenko was winning 70% of the round, maybe 80% of that round, and then Grasso just towards the end did have some big moments, but definitely does not warrant a 10-8, and that's what completely screwed Valentina Shevchenko. So Grasso retains the belt. Shevchenko maybe gets the rematch. That's what we're seeing. It comes out later. Shevchenko got injured earlier in the fight, so she was compromised pretty much for 4 rounds or so, but I definitely had Shevchenko winning that. And is she going to get the rematch? That's the biggest question, because you have Manon Fiorot out there. You have Erin Blanchfield out there. There are legit contenders that are next in line. Shevchenko, by the time she gets a rematch, will be 36, 37 years old. So will people really want to see that? Is it going to be the best version of Shevchenko? Definitely not. So really unfortunate there. So I'm curious to see what people think. Yeah, of course. That was not a 10-8. I think Valentina should have won. And that's really what it comes down to, the way the scorecards came out. If that 10-8 gets changed to a 10-9, Valentina Shevchenko wins a split decision. And in my opinion, that was the correct way to go about it. But of course, that's not how it went down. Alexa Grasso keeps the belt. She's talking up a whole storm as if she did win the fight, which is kind of annoying to see, but she looked great in that fight. Don't get me wrong. I had Val winning, but Grasso definitely stepped up to the plate as the champ. She is going to be a problem for just about anyone in that weight class that's not Shevchenko. So I am excited to see her as the future champion. Perfect. So Dana said last night they would do a trilogy. And then Dana also said they might do Erin versus Font, which I assume you mean Fiorot. But yes, I think you have to do Erin versus Fiorot, because those are clearly the next 2 people up, and we'll see where it goes from there. And then again, on that same card, Noche UFC, we had the questionable stoppage with Daniel Lacerda and Edgar Chairez, where Chairez had him in a standing guillotine? The choke was pretty nasty, and Lacerda was hanging tough in there. I kind of went back and looked at it, and I actually kind of do agree with the ref. When you look at it, he does pick up the arm. The arm falls down limp, which to me seems like that's the cue for the ref to step in and make the stoppage. But, you listen to Dom Cruz live, while he's doing commentary, he's like, you better not stop the fight. You better not stop the fight. Kept talking to the ref. And lo and behold, he actually stopped the fight. But Daniel Lacerda immediately pops up. He didn't go out. So he starts contesting it. They review it. It eventually gets ruled a no contest. I think I saw online that they are rebooking that fight for maybe November. But it looks like they are going to run that one back. But that was a controversial. Yeah, exactly. Joey saying here in the comments, his arm looked limp 100%. If you go back and watch that, he looks fine. He looks fine. Then the ref takes the arm, drops it. It falls limp. That's a cue to me. That's a cue to me. But I don't know, because Dom Cruz obviously was seeing something completely different. He kept saying to the ref, don't stop it. And he did stop it. And then, of course, it ended up being a bad stoppage. So that's probably a lack of grappling knowledge on my end. But I thought that just looking at it again, that the arm did go limp. So when he did do the stoppage, it made sense to me. But, I had Lacerda in that one, and it looked like he was going to lose that fight for it. So for it to get ruled a no contest, your bets get voided, which works out for me. And then JDM versus Kevin Holland. I firmly believe that JDM won that fight. I'm actually shocked that some people had it for Holland, because really the way that I was seeing it was that every time Holland was landing, you saw that tight guard of JDM every time. I feel like he was not getting hit cleanly pretty much throughout the entire fight. But when JDM was the one moving forward, when he was ripping combos to the body, finishing, hooks to the face, it was pretty clear to me that JDM was the one landing the bigger shots, the cleaner shots, dealing more damage throughout the fight. And it was pretty clear that he won that. So, shout out to Kevin Holland. He's always game coming down to 170. I still think that does make sense for him. But I thought JDM won that fight, and now JDM kind of just moves up into that next level, because that's a huge step. He beat Randy Brown. That was a good name to have. He should have had a couple fights, but they got canceled. And now he gets Kevin Holland, and you get a win like that, a name like that on your resume. That's going to skyrocket you. He is ready probably for the top 10 going forward. So I'm excited to see that. But that was Noche UFC in a nutshell. Picks-wise, we did very good. Betting-wise, we did okay. Padilla was really the one where I said it on this show. Kyle Nelson is just that guy who just plays spoiler. He makes fights dirty. He makes fights close. And that's exactly what he did. And he won that fight. And I should not have bet Padilla. And I parlayed him in a couple two-leg parlays, so I lost a couple of units there, but otherwise probably broke even, probably went maybe just a little bit positive on the night. So now we're looking forward. We're going into UFC Vegas 79, so I think this is probably a good time to just transition right into it. And we have, I think 11 fights or so on this card, and it's opening up with Montserrat Hendon taking on Tamires Vidal. You have Hendon as the right now plus 205 underdog. I'm seeing minus 250 here on Tapology for Vidal. And this one, it feels like it should be pretty clean cut. Montserrat Hendon, she's making her UFC debut here at 34 years old, only 5-0 in her pro career. There's a couple red flags there where, one, she's clearly inexperienced. And if you're making your UFC debut and even your MMA debut not too long ago, it just doesn't really make sense. You're 34 years old. I'm not seeing a lot of potential there. I don't really see why they would sign her here, except to just really feed her to Vidal. In her last fight, split decision. She's got some decent size. She can be pretty physical with her game. She probably wants to get the fight to the ground, but because the striking just really isn't there. Not very technical. Looping shots. The defense is a massive liability. But really it's just the size, the physicality, it's the ground game and even I'll throw in the cardio. I'll say the durability and the cardio can be a factor here. Those are her pros. Vidal, though, we look at her, she is 9 years younger. So right off the bat, when you see that huge difference in age, it vastly favors the younger fighter. We see that time in and time out. So even 9 years younger, Vidal has more experience as well. She's fighting a better level of competition. She has a win in the UFC coming off a flying knee victory, and that's really kind of her game. She is a dynamic, powerful striker. She loads up on her shots. You know, we see her throwing the flying knees. That's a good thing. And then even on the ground, if it gets to the ground, she probably has the better grappling game, and she definitely has the better submission game. So really for me, this is just Vidal any way she wants it. Personally, I am going to go with Vidal by decision. That's how I see it. But, you know, there are some unknowns when you have a younger fighter here. Only one fight in the UFC for Vidal. Rendon can play spoiler. Like I said, the durability and the cardio, probably her best weapons. That's probably where maybe she can win the fight if this goes into rounds, 1.5 and over. That's probably where maybe Rendon can take over. But I think Vidal definitely is going to take this one. So I got Vidal by decision, and she seems to be a pretty popular play this week. The line, I think, moved 200 up to 250, maybe has come down just a little bit, but I like Vidal in the spot, and we can just move right on to the next fight here. Another women's MMA bout. We have Mizuki Inoue taking on Hannah Goldy, and kind of a similar spot here for me. You have Mizuki, minus 250 favorite. Hanny. Oh, geez. Tough one. Hannah Goldy, plus 205 as the underdog. Hannah Goldy, 6-3. Mizuki, 14-6. But, of course, she is coming off of a pretty long layoff, almost 3 years since Mizuki last fought. She is 1-1 in the UFC. That loss is coming to Amanda Lemos. Really not all that bad of a loss. She did go to decision. She took some hard shots, and that's kind of the game for her. She is always moving forward. She has that constant forward pressure. She's got decent striking. She definitely can be hittable. We saw that in the Lemos fight, but again, Lemos, just challenged for a belt. I'm not really holding that against her. And then you look at some of the wins for Mizuki, 9 of 14 pro wins by submission. She is training at Serra-Longo. That's a great gym to be in. She's going to have the 4-inch reach advantage here. So really, striking edge probably goes to her if it hits the mat. The one thing about Hannah Goldy is she is absolutely jacked. I believe she's coming down in weight for this one. If I remember correctly, this is 115. Yeah, they're fighting at 115. Hannah Goldy usually at 125. You see the frame on her. She is absolutely jacked. So for her to come down to 115 doesn't really make a lot of sense. And she's only 1-3 in the UFC. The losses haven't really aged well. We saw Meatball Molly McCann absolutely steamrolled her. She's got a loss to Belbita. She's got a loss to Granger. Really, outside of her being physically gifted, that's the only positive that I can take away from it. I don't think she's going to win in the striking. Maybe she uses the physicality, takes the fight to the mat. But, I don't think she's really a great wrestler. And if she does get to the mat, again, Mizuki, 9 of 14 pro wins by submission. I think, again, this is just Mizuki all day. Hannah Goldy, they fed her to Meatball Molly McCann. It feels like they are feeding her to Mizuki here. So I got Mizuki winning this one. I am going to go with a round 2 submission. And best bet number 1, it's a little greasy, I'm not going to lie, but if you take Vidal, you take Mizuki, you throw them in a 2-leg parlay, it's only minus 110. That is not a bad price tag. It gets you, skin in the game early in this fight card, the first 2 fights. So we start out with a couple of wins here, minus 110. I believe I threw a half unit on that. So I think that's a great way to start out the card. Again, greasy. Are you going to trust Mizuki? Are you going to trust Vidal? That's a little sketchy, but I'm going with it. And that takes us to our next fight here. And it just keeps getting greasy, guys. It's a good card. There are some pretty notable names on here. I think there's some decent matchups, but there are some greasy matchups as well. And this one just might take the cake. We have Jake Collier taking on Muhammad Usman. Man, Jake Collier, 13-9. Muhammad Usman, 9-2. You have plus 145 underdog on Jake Collier, minus 170 for Usman. I believe that the odds have come down. I have seen Usman now down to minus 150, Jake Collier down to plus 125. And this is as sketchy as it gets. I've been waiting to fade Muhammad Usman. Of course, he is the brother of Kamaru Usman, but he is the much lesser version of him. We saw him against Zach Pauga. Zach Pauga completely dominating that fight, staying outside on range, picking him apart because Usman's striking is terrible. His defense is terrible. And Usman just lands an absolute bomb, takes out Zach Pauga. Usman picks up the W. In his next fight, he takes on Junior Tafa. Junior Tafa, who is a pure kickboxer. Usman throws on the wrestling shoes. All of a sudden, he's the best wrestler in the world, takes down Tafa every single round, holds him down just enough to win that fight. But did it look good? Did it look confident? Absolutely not, because when it was standing, Junior Tafa was destroying him on the feet. So that's 2 fights in a row. Zach Pauga, Junior Tafa destroying him on the feet, but he just finds a way to win fights. He finds a way to win fights. The cardio is not that good. The striking, like I said, defensively is just not there. But he's got the power. He's absolutely jacked, and apparently he is a decent wrestler, but can I trust him to do that for all 3 rounds against... Do I say this is a step up in competition? I don't even know, because Jay Collier, comparing him to Junior Tafa, kind of weird to do, because Jay Collier has been all over the place, as we know. Natural 185er, moving up to heavyweight, and he comes in at that max 265 limit. He is absolutely putting on the pounds, and you know, there was a moment where Jay Collier did used to have pretty good cardio, and he could pair that with a high level of output. So, you know, that was kind of in the past. We saw it against Chris Barnett. You know, he put on I think it was a 10-8 round, maybe in round 1, and then he absolutely gassed Barnett, turns around, ends up finishing him. I think it was in round 2. So there's so many question marks with Jay Collier. You can't trust either guy. Neither guy is good. Again, I don't mean to offend any fighter that's in the UFC. Obviously, these guys are professionals, but when we're speaking relative to the UFC, the entire roster, the entire division, these guys are bottom of the barrel. So I'm going to trust Jay Collier as the underdog. Like I said, I think he'll have the striking edge. I think he'll have the speed edge. I believe he should have the better cardio. And his takedown defense isn't what Junior Tafa's was. It should be better than that, because Junior Tafa, again, a pure kickboxer. Jay Collier should have better takedown defense. As the underdog, like I said, I've been waiting to fade Muhammad Usman. Maybe this isn't the spot to do it, but I'm going with it anyway. Give me Jay Collier to win as the underdog, plus 125. And it's terrible, man. It's absolutely terrible. In the comments here, Usman is not that good. If the fight with Tafa stood up longer, Tafa rocked him multiple times, 100%. That's all it was. Usman took him down, was able to hold him down for just enough time, 2 to 3 minutes per round, where he was able to win those rounds on the judges' scorecards. But every time the fight was standing, Junior Tafa was lighting him up. And not even just lighting him up, every time he made contact, it looked like Muhammad Usman was just wobbling. He was ready to fall apart. He was going to get finished, but he just somehow dug deep, and he got the wrestling going, and that's fine. I mean, if he can do that, that's good on him, but I will gladly take a stab here on the underdog. Jake Collier maybe winning me some money. I'm not throwing the house on it. Maybe a quarter unit, maybe a half unit, but this cannot be trusted at all. So, you know, we'll move on to the next fight here, and it starts to make a little bit more sense. We got Jacob Malkoun taking on Cody Brundage. You have Jacob Malkoun just 7-2. Right now, I'm seeing him as a massive favorite, ballooned up to minus 550. Cody Brundage 8-5. He is now the plus 400 underdog. Listen, Jacob Malkoun has had a decent go of it in the UFC. Is he a world beater? Absolutely not. Is he a great mixed martial artist? A great mixed martial artist? I don't believe he is. So for him to come in here, balloon up to a minus 550 price tag, I think that is way too high. But what we have seen here and why it makes sense is that Cody Brundage has, you know, 1 round of cardio. That's probably it. He falls off a cliff after that. We've seen it time and time again. Not only that, he's very dangerous. I'll give him that. He is very dangerous in round 1. He nearly finishes fights, you know, across the board. You look at the Alex Jacek fight. Like, he looked very good early on, somehow loses control on top. He ends up on the bottom. Alex Jacek just rains bombs, finishes him. Rodolfo Vieira, same story. He has Rodolfo Vieira very hurt. That fight could have been stopped. That fight could have been finished by Brundage. But again, the fight continues. The cardio falls off. He ends up getting finished. And that's just been the name of the game for Cody Brundage. It's round one or it's completely bust. And in his last fight, SD Dumas, losing a decision to him, that is a very tough look. Brundage is supposed to be this, high level wrestler, and SD Dumas just was able to out wrestle him really for 3 rounds and get the win there. So that's not a good look. And it's just, you can't trust Cody Brundage. The fight IQ isn't there. The cardio isn't there. You're just relying strictly on a round one finish. So the way that this makes sense is that you're going to get insane odds on Cody Brundage. You could just take him outright. Plus 400, you could just sprinkle that as a little bit of a hedge. But if you want to take, Cody Brundage round one, you're probably going to get plus 600, plus 700. That's a decent way to play it. Because Malkoun at minus 550, now he's pretty unplayable. But, like I said before, okay, so the name of the game here, Brundage, after round one, not a problem. What does Malkoun do? He wrestles. He wrestles, chain wrestles all 3 rounds. The cardio checks out. Cardio for days on this guy. Right now, he is averaging 7.46 takedowns per 15 minutes. That is insanely high. That's probably one of the highest in the entire UFC. The striking doesn't matter. He is a low-level guy, and he's just going to wrestle nonstop. That's what's going to happen. As long as he survives round one, he is going to win this fight, most likely by decision, because that's what Jacob Malkoun does best. I believe only 2 of his 7 wins are by finish. He is a decision machine. Maybe he pulls off what Lupi Godinez did last weekend, because I had her winning by decision plus 110 as one of my best bets. Maybe Malkoun does the same thing, because Brundage, can be finished or be finished. That's kind of his style there. But we did see him go to decision in his last fight against SD Dumas. So I think Malkoun by decision, that's going to be best bet number 2. Malkoun by decision plus 135. I don't know how you can hate that. Malkoun is a decisionator. Brundage did go to decision in his last fight. It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. You're getting plus money on the most likely path to victory. That's what I said about Lupi last time out. She absolutely dominated that fight, but I just don't see, Elise Reed did get ragdolled. I don't see Brundage getting ragdolled by any means. Probably hangs tough in there for a little while. But Malkoun by decision makes sense. Again, minus 550, really unplayable. That accent on artist was crazy. Hey, I'm a Boston guy. I do, I grew up in Massachusetts, so I just randomly just decided to have a Boston accent out of nowhere. But yeah, as we're saying here, how is Cody still with the UFC after that performance? Again, man, it's just, yeah, he's probably what, 0-3, 0-4 in his last few fights. He did have that round 1 knockout over Tresean Gore, which maybe is why the UFC is holding on here. Every time he fights, it's always an absolute barn burner. Again, usually someone's getting finished in his fights, so it is entertaining to watch, but I just can't back that. Plus 400 is a huge price tag. Again, I'm probably going to play round 1 just in case, but I don't know, man. It's pretty crazy. So Jacob Malkoun wrestles his way to a decision. Minus 550 turns into plus 135. I don't see how you can hate on that. And that's what we're going with. That's what we're going with. Moving on to the next fight here. Tim Means taking on Andre Fialho. Man, it's greasy, man. It's greasy. It's like there was a moment in time where Andre Fialho had a ton of hype. Do you guys remember that? Came into the UFC, made his UFC debut. Looked pretty good in his UFC debut against a tough opponent. And then after that, his next 2 fights, finishes both guys early on. He is becoming a fan favorite. And then the next 3 fights, he gets finished. He gets finished. He gets finished. People start to figure him out. The chin isn't all that there. Maybe the cardio isn't all that there. So what do you do with Andre Fialho in this matchup? It is a very weird one, because we're seeing 39 years old in Tim Means on the other half of that. So he's almost 40 years old. Andre Fialho just 29. So just that 10-year age gap alone gives you a ton of pause here. We do have Andre Fialho as the minus 200 favorite. Tim Means can be had at plus 165. And Tim Means, man, look at that record, 32, 15-1. He has been around the block. Andre Fialho, 16-7, a ton of experience for him as well. So this is a strange one. I am going to go with the underdog here in Tim Means. kind of putting the fade on Fialho. As I just mentioned, people start to figure him out. It's kind of that same thing with Cody Brundage. If he's not getting you out of there in round one, he's pretty much strictly a boxer. That's about it. He's not taking the fight to the ground. We've seen Tim Means in the past. How does he lose? How does Tim Means lose? Either by decision or by submission. He's been submitted like 7 or 8 times in his professional career. He's only been finished by knockout twice in his professional career. Look at that record. He's got like 50 fights. Professionally, he's only been finished by KO twice. One was in 2019. The other was in 2004. So to say this guy is chinny, I think is pretty questionable. I think his durability is actually pretty solid, unless, like I just said, unless you have that submission game, unless you can beat him for all 3 rounds. I don't necessarily know if Fialho can do either of those things because, like I said, round 1 or bust is what we're seeing, and the chin is highly suspect, and Tim Means can still crack, man. I think he can still take this fight into deeper waters, survives round 1. I think Tim Means is live for a finish here. I am going to go with Tim Means as the underdog. I'm going with a Tim Means round 3 knockout, putting the fade on Andre Fialho. What do you guys think about that one? Thoughts on upcoming BKFC? Not too much going on there for me, my guy. I don't really follow that promotion. All I know is Platinum Mike Perry is just putting people to sleep. He is the king of BKFC, but outside of that, I got nothing on it. My apologies. His job might be on the line. I think Andre finds a knockout. Yeah, it is totally possible. I mean, you could probably say that about either fighter. Tim Means, 39 years old. How much longer is he really sticking around? But Andre Fialho, 0-3 in his last 3, getting finished in all 3. Definitely fighting for his job. Definitely gives you some extra motivation there, but just the way that this guy fights, I mean, it's a little bit reckless. He is hittable. The chin doesn't hold up. Tim Means is an absolute dog. I don't think we've seen the steepest decline of Tim Means just yet. I think he's going to put it together over 3 rounds, finds a round 3 KO. And let's do a quick cash giveaway. We don't have too many people in the comments right now, so just picking someone at random. It was a 50-50 shot, Joey. It was a 50-50 shot. Axe Valens, you are getting $10. Just randomly giving away $10. That's what I do throughout the live. I'll just pick some people, and I'm just throwing away $10. If you can, go into the link in the profile. Follow me on any social media where you can DM me. So you could go to YouTube. I do have my email out there. You could go on Twitter. You could DM me there. You could go on Instagram. You can DM me there. Just shoot me a quick DM, and I will shoot you $10 for no other reason, for just giving back to the community. That is what we do here with the MMA Minute. But we can continue moving on here as the fights start to make a little bit more sense. Man, this is a crazy card, but moving on here, we got Miles Johns taking on Dan Argueta. Great fight. I'll probably say right now, this could be your fight of the night potential. Dan Argueta, 9-1, -175 favorite. Miles Johns, 13-2. He is the +150 underdog. That line on Argueta just slowly making its way down here. And you know what? That's totally fine with me. That's totally fine with me. Miles Johns, so you're getting 2 similar age guys here. So this is not 39 versus 29. This is not 34 versus 24. We get 30 versus 29. We get 2 people in their prime going at it. Miles Johns. These guys are both very similar styles. You're going to see them match up very well with each other. Miles Johns, that stocky power wrestler. But what I see from him usually when I was watching the tape back, he's very patient. But he's very patient almost to a fault where, the other guys who are leading the dance, who are leading the charge on him, who are the more aggressive fighter, they're the ones finding more success. He can counter pretty well, and he does. Like I said, he's that stocky power wrestler. He does pack some power in that punch. But I wish he was just a little more active. I wish he wasn't looking for that counter shot. And again, that kind of translates with the wrestling. He's a stocky power wrestler, but he doesn't choose to wrestle all that much. He likes to stand up and strike. He likes to try to knock guys out. He should be wrestling more. And that's where I'm going to see the difference here is I just think Argueta is literally a better version of Miles Johns. That's what I've seen in the tape. I remember taping him on the regional scene, and I really liked what I saw. I kind of liken him to like a mini Michael Chandler is kind of how I put it. He's also that powerful, explosive wrestler, but I think he's going to be the one that is a lot more active. He's going to be the one pushing the pace. He's going to be the one initiating the grappling and the wrestling. And if you're looking at Dan Argueta's last fight against Ronnie Lawrence, I'm buying so much into that because I do rank Ronnie Lawrence pretty high. Did I see correctly that he may have been cut from the UFC recently? I thought I saw that floating around Twitter. Not sure if that's legit or not, but I still held Ronnie Lawrence to a pretty high standard. He's a very good wrestler. We've seen that in all of his UFC fights. And Dan Argueta went out there and nearly had this guy finished. Granted, there was a weird ref stoppage. Dan Argueta did have some sort of choke going on there. Ronnie Lawrence, the ref thought he was out. He wasn't. We just saw that at Noche UFC. They rule a no contest, but Dan Argueta looked phenomenal in that fight. So there's money coming down, minus 175 for Dan Argueta. I absolutely love that, and I am playing it straight. I do have a straight play on Dan Argueta. I probably got it at minus 185. I thought maybe he would climb, if anything, if his odds would actually go up. But, man, he's just coming down to minus 175, so I'll gladly take that. Maybe I'll double down on it. Who knows? Ivan, my guy, what's going on? Thanks for joining the live. Yeah, I think Miles wins, but this definitely has fight of the night potential. And it's kind of funny. I've seen this one kind of go back and forth on Twitter. People are saying Miles Johns is just a better version of Dan Argueta, but then I see people saying Dan Argueta is just a better version of Miles Johns, and I'm on the Dan Argueta side. That's just what I've seen. I was very impressed with that win over Ronnie Lawrence. It's a no contest. I consider it a win. I really thought he was going to win that fight. He was going to finish that fight, and he's just going to be the more active guy. He's going to be the one leading the dance. I think he could even have a cardio advantage here. So I love Dan Argueta here, but Miles Johns is a tough guy. He's pretty durable. So Dan Argueta by decision makes sense to me. It's not a best bet, but I do have Dan Argueta in a couple parlays. I am playing him straight. We'll see how it goes. Either way, fun fight. And like I said, fight of the night potential. Two very similar style guys. I'm very interested to see how that one's going to go. And that's your prelim headliner. They don't just throw someone in the prelim headliner. That's what makes people watch the main card. So they're doing it for a reason. So we move on. Charles Jourdain versus Ricardo Ramos. And that is to start out the main card. Absolute banger. You have Charles Jourdain, 14-6-1. He is right now the minus 140 favorite. Ricardo Ramos is the 16-4 plus 120 underdog. And I've seen people go back and forth on this one. This could be the Twitter back and forth war. Probably on the entire card here. There's probably, there are a couple closer fights that we might see on this one, but for me, this was one of the hardest ones to break down. Looking at Ricardo Ramos, I just likened Dan Argueta to like a mini version of Michael Chandler. Well, I kind of see Ramos as like a Yair Rodriguez. Those are the vibes that I get from him because he is a flashy, dynamic striker. He'll open round one throwing spinning heel kicks. We saw a spinning back elbow finish from him. This dude is absolutely crazy on the feet. And that's great. That's something that can definitely work to a certain level of fighter, but to a better level of competition, I'm not so sure that's going to hold up, that type of style. But when you look at his ground game as well, I mean, he's got slick grappling. He has legit submissions off his back. We saw him against Bill Algeo. He got 8 takedowns against Bill Algeo. So the ground game is there. The grappling, the submissions, he's flashy, dynamic striker, big finisher on the feet. Really the downsides that I see from him is, if you allow him to do all those things, he's very good. But as we say in MMA, he's a good hammer, but he's a bad nail. And I believe that. We've seen him against Said Nurmagomedov. He was KO'd in that fight. Lerone Murphy, he was KO'd in that fight against Takugov. He got bullied in that fight. And kind of to add also to that, lower level of volume. 3.32 significant strikes landed per minute. The most he's ever landed in a 3-round fight was 68 strikes. So for me, those are really kind of the downsides for him, is that if you're the one bullying him, if you're the one that's more aggressive, you can definitely find success. He has a low level of output. And I do believe that if this fight continues, past that 1.5 mark, this is where Ramos probably starts to fade, and where Jourdain, that's kind of where he starts to shine. I mean, you're talking about a guy 3-round cardio. Jourdain probably built for 5 rounds. This is a guy who's been facing a very high level of competition. He is a very durable guy. The cardio definitely checks out. Striking wise, again, Ramos, that flashy, dynamic striker, but I don't think that works against a guy like Jourdain, who is very experienced, who has really seen it all. And like I said, he's facing a high level of competition. I don't think that flashy, dynamic striking, the spinning heel kicks, the spinning back fist, the spinning whatever you want to call it, I don't think that works against Charles Jourdain. He's always going to be the one forward moving. I think he's going to be the more technical striker in there. And again, that 3-round cardio is going to be huge. That 3-round cardio is going to be huge. The biggest flaw, why I think this fight is so closely lined, is that the one knock that you can say on Charles Jourdain is the takedown defense. It's the takedown defense. I don't think he has bad grappling defense, but we have seen him get taken down a couple times. Nathaniel Wood was able to have success striking, and then he mixed in the takedowns. He won that fight. Shane Burgos, of all people, a guy who is very good on the feet, was able to take the back of Charles Jourdain and was able to beat him that way. So it's definitely the takedown defense that really has me a little bit worried. But we kind of saw it in the last fight against Kron Gracie. Maybe the takedown defense looks a little bit better. I don't think Kron's takedowns are probably as good as Ramos, but it's definitely, positive affirmation that Jourdain is doing the right things. And I got to be honest, -140, I think that's a very playable line here. I am going to go with Charles Jourdain to win by decision. I think he's the better striker. I think the cardio is going to take over. So I think really the way this probably plays out, Ramos comes out there, guns blazing, probably looks really good in round 1, but then you're going to see Jourdain just start to chip away here. And I think Jourdain wins 2 and 3 and ultimately wins the fight. So I do have Jourdain winning here by decision, but like I said, -140, that is a very playable price tag. Yeah, here we go. I fuck with Jourdain. A lot of people do. He is a massive fan favorite. Ricardo Ramos in his last fight, not his last fight, his last scheduled fight, missed weight by nearly 10 pounds. Coming down to 145, I think he weighed in at like 154. Obviously, something was going on behind the scenes, but that is a horrible weight miss. Maybe the weight cut's going to go badly for him here. Charles Jourdain makes 145, no problem. So that could be another advantage there. But yeah, let's go Charles Jourdain, man. He's a massive fan favorite. And earlier in the week, we've kind of seen this line go up and down. I think I got in at -135. Right now, he's -140, but that's still a very playable line. You could throw him in a couple parlays, definitely boost some value, but I like him straight. You can just take that -140 money line, and I think that's a great play. But I'm curious to see what other people think because, like I said, on Twitter, people are just going back and forth nonstop. And I don't hate the Ramos side. I almost went for it just because of that dog money, but the more I thought about it, I think Jourdain is just going to just bully Ramos and just take over as the fight goes on. But you never know. Ramos hasn't fought in quite some time. He is a younger fighter, so maybe making some big steps forward. But I know what Jourdain is. He stays active. He's very good facing a high level of competition. I love Charles Jourdain in that spot. So that takes us to our next fight. Bryan Battle taking on AJ Fletcher. I'll be honest, I threw money early on AJ Fletcher +170. It's a good price tag, don't get me wrong, but you'll see where this pick goes. Maybe I'm flip-flopping on it a little bit, but Bryan Battle here, he is 10 and 2, -190 favorite. AJ Fletcher also 10 and 2. He's the +160 underdog, so I got in at +170. Getting a little bit more value in there. Some of the money is starting to come down on Fletcher, which is a little bit surprising, but we'll break this one down. So AJ Fletcher is, another one of these guys who is a short, stocky wrestler. Pretty much at the 170 weight class, he's always undersized, no matter what. I think he's just 5'10", and he's got a tiny reach. Even, for 170 especially, but even if you drop him down to 155, like he just has a small reach. But he is a very aggressive fighter. He absolutely hits like a truck, has a ton of power in the hands. He's definitely got solid takedowns. He's got solid ground and pound. The level of competition has actually been pretty solid. We see him fighting guys like Semi the Jedi. He's able to stay in a competitive fight with him. Themba Gorimbo was his last fight out. Themba Gorimbo aged pretty well. He just picked up a UFC win. I think his first UFC win and AJ Fletcher was able to handle him on the ground. A little bit of obstacles there, but he did get the job done. He did get the finish. I do have a little bit of cardio concerns for this guy just because of the way that he fights. It's very explosive. He will use the wrestling. If people are able to get back to the feet, he loads up on his shots. So cardio is a little bit concerning. And really, the biggest thing here is that it's that 10-inch reach disadvantage. 10 inches. That's insane. The stats have already backed that up. I think if it's like a 6 or 7-inch reach advantage for one guy, the line typically shifts in his favor for sure. It's like a 65-70% win rate for those guys. 10-inch reach disadvantage for AJ Fletcher. And that's just crazy to me. But granted, Brian Battle, he used to be a 185er. He is making that weight down to 170. I think he probably struggles to make 170, but that's the weight class that he's chosen to be at. And just for that reason, he's a size bully. So AJ Fletcher probably shouldn't have a 10-inch reach disadvantage, but Brian Battle just happens to be a massive dude for the division. And it's really translated very well for him. Moving down to 170, we've seen 2 round 1 knockouts, one in 44 seconds, one in 14 seconds. He fought Rinat Fakhretdinov, which has aged phenomenally. He was taken down. He was controlled for like 13 of the 15 minutes. So the silver lining is that he survived and that Rinat looks like an absolute killer. So I'm going to say that he took that fight on short notice as well. So I'm not really going to put too much stock and decrease the stock of Brian Battle because of that loss. Because the 2 round 1 knockouts have looked great. He's got that 10-inch reach advantage here. Power, obviously. Submission threat off his back. Offensively, he could even get some wrestling going. So unless AJ Fletcher is prepared to wrestle all 3 rounds here, which I suppose he probably could do it, that's probably why you're seeing this line probably tighten up a little bit. That's probably where AJ Fletcher wins if he is able to get those takedowns and hold down Brian Battle. But really just that size, that reach disadvantage, I just can't get behind it. I have to go with Brian Battle here. I did throw that initial money on AJ Fletcher plus 170, but I have flip-flopped. I have turned sides here. I am going with Brian Battle. I do think Fletcher is going to go out there with a very aggressive game plan. And I think that cardio is just going to slowly wither away. Brian Battle is just going to slowly chip away. And on the feet, I just don't see it being close at all. So I have to go with Brian Battle, and I have to go with a round 3 knockout. Yep. So Joey here, I hope Battle fixed his takedown defense. I threw money on his money line, and I threw on him by decision. So yeah, that's really the biggest concern here, the takedown defense. But again, Rinat Fakhretdinov, I think, is a completely different animal. AJ Fletcher is a solid wrestler, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it for all 3 rounds like Rinat was able to do. And again, Battle was on short notice. I think Battle definitely has some submission upside. So if he is on his back, he's going to be throwing up some crazy stuff. So AJ Fletcher maybe gets caught that way. And then if it gets standing, it's game over, man. It's game over. But there is that small threat of the takedown defense. Maybe it doesn't hold up. Maybe Fletcher is able to win 2 out of the 3 rounds. I don't think he finishes Brian Battle by any means, but if Brian Battle gets the job done, I definitely can see him getting the finish. So, you could always play it that way, but I am going with Brian Battle to win this one. I'm going with a round 3 knockout. And we got 3 fights left here, guys. 3 fights left. This one doesn't really make too much sense. We have Marina Rodriguez. We have Michelle Waterson-Gomez 2. These people have already faced each other. When I say people, I mean fighters. And I don't know why we're getting a rematch. I really just, it makes 0 sense. Why are we getting a rematch? It's just, they ran out of matchups to make. We've seen Rodriguez, she at one point was a title challenger. Michelle Waterson-Gomez, title challenger a long time ago. Both, they are older fighters. You kind of forget that. I always think Marina Rodriguez is like, I'm like, yeah, she's 30, 31. She's going to be sticking around. No, she's 36 years old. Michelle Waterson-Gomez has been around forever, 37, nearly 38 years old. So they just took 2 older fighters who were out of contention, and they said, hey, let's run this back because it was so close the first time around, right? It was so close the first time around. No, Marina Rodriguez destroyed Michelle Waterson-Gomez. I believe she won unanimously 4 out of the 5 rounds. It was a main event, which is a little shocking, but I don't really understand what we're doing here. I don't know what has changed since for either fighter. Like nothing has really changed. And you're seeing Marina Rodriguez here, minus 320, Michelle Waterson-Gomez, plus 250. That line has not really moved too much. I think Rodriguez opened as a bigger favorite than minus 320. So if anything, some people are sprinkling some money on Waterson-Gomez, but the only thing you're banking on is that Waterson-Gomez decides to become a wrestler, which she has shown a little bit, more of a likelihood to go for the takedowns and try to work that game plan. We know Marina Rodriguez, if there's one way to beat her, it's to take her to the ground. But, Carla Esparza is able to do that. That's a former champ, former multiple-time champ. She's able to do that. Michelle Waterson-Gomez at age 37, I don't think she's going to be able to do that. Definitely not for all 3 rounds. And when the fight stays standing, it's Marina Rodriguez all day. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Marina Rodriguez has some of the best striking in the division. And I will stand by that. She did get slept by Amanda Lemos. Well, Amanda Lemos probably one of the few who is a better striker than her. But Marina Rodriguez, I think, generally speaking, I wish the takedown defense was a little bit better. I thought she was working on it for a while. I thought it did look better at one point. It certainly did against Mackenzie Dern, but, in her last fight out is against, was it Verna Jandaroba? I believe it was against her. Yep, it was against her, and she was wrestled, and she was controlled, and she did lose the fight. So there is that path for Michelle Waterson-Gomez. I just don't, she's never been a notable 3-round wrestler. And do I think she's just going to suddenly start to do that? No, I don't. So I don't know. There's really nothing else to do here. Fading Waterson-Gomez, Joey says in the comments, and that's really the extent of it. I wish I was a lot more confident because minus 320 means you're going to be parlaying that. Maybe that's what you end up doing. You do throw it in a parlay, or you take Marina Rodriguez to win by decision, but that's easily her likely path to victory. I think I saw on Bet Online when they dropped props early, it was minus 180 for Marina Rodriguez by decision. That's terrible. Terrible. Unplayable. Just skip this fight. Just hit skip on the button and don't bet on this fight. It's a rematch that nobody wants to see. Nothing has changed between the two fighters. There's really no reason Marina Rodriguez is going to lose. Maybe she finds a finish. That's the only thing. If the fight stays standing long enough, I could see maybe Marina Rodriguez just putting together some big combinations. She does have big power. So maybe you sprinkle some on the under, which is, the over is very juiced. So maybe you sprinkle some on the under, maybe Marina by knockout. I don't know. Just stay away. Don't parlay it, but maybe parlay it. Do whatever you want. What am I talking about? Marina Rodriguez can't lose this fight, right? She can't lose this fight. So put it into parlay, whatever. It's probably worth at least one of your parlays. She's got the size. She's got the reach. Striking for days. Waterson-Gomez can't wrestle all 3 rounds. I don't believe in it. So let's just move right on to the co-main event of the night. And this is an absolute banger. This is a phenomenal matchup. This is a great co-main event. I cannot wait to see this fight. This is another one of those matchups where people are going back and forth. Kind of, not totally. It's probably 60-40 from what I've seen. We have Bryce Mitchell taking on Dan 50K Ige. Bryce Mitchell, of course, goes by Thug Nasty. So you're getting Thug Nasty versus 50K Ige. 2 phenomenal nicknames. Bryce Mitchell, 15-2. He is the minus 210 favorite right now. Dan Ige, 17-6. Right now, he is plus 175. And man, did I go back and forth on this one. I really wanted to pick Dan Ige in the spot. There is still a part of me that sees that line continue to climb up for Bryce Mitchell. People are jumping on that. You could have got Bryce Mitchell probably minus 150 early in the week. Now he's minus 210. Laying that kind of money seems kind of crazy. You got to think the value now, plus 175, makes sense on Dan Ige. I really wanted to go with Dan Ige in this spot. Dan Ige has continued to fly under the radar. He always proves me wrong. I faded him against Damon Jackson, probably one of my worst reads that I had, and he just reminded us why he's 50K Ige, put him to sleep against Nate Landwehr. wasn't even close, completely dominated that fight. But that kind of speaks to where he's at. Dan Ige, to me, is an advanced gatekeeper. You see him go against a higher level of competition, a guy like Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar beats this guy. Movsar Evloev beats this guy. These are high-level names at that weight class for 145. They beat Dan Ige, but Nate Landwehr, he handles him. Damon Jackson, Fringe 15, he handles him. That's where he belongs. He's like that top 10 guy. If you want to get into the top 10, you got to beat Dan Ige. The dude's boxing, his striking is so slick. It's so good. He puts together very good combinations, hits hard, good power for this guy. BJJ-wise, he's got good grappling. I believe he is a black belt, but the one thing is, yes, maybe that makes him okay defensively, but we've never really seen him use it offensively too much. And the takedown defense, that's the biggest thing here. It's the takedown defense. And I know people will say, okay, Movsar Evloev, he took him down 8-9 times in a fight, but it's Movsar Evloev. That's a super high level name. That's a guy who will be fighting for the belt, could be a future champion one day. So really, you just got to think, is Mitchell on a similar level to that? Because we also saw the Korean Zombie. He was able to mix in takedowns on Dan Ige, find some success there. It's just, that's the clear weakness. I rate Bryce Mitchell pretty highly. And I know people are kind of back and forth. He doesn't really have the notable names that we want to see. They'll be quick to throw out that against Ilia Topuria. He didn't really hold his own in a fight that some people thought he was going to win. But it turns out Bryce Mitchell wasn't 100% in that fight. So how much can we really put into that? And you even go back in the fight before that, he's fighting Edson Barbosa. Edson Barbosa is an absolute legend. Edson Barbosa is a tough out for just about anybody. And Bryce Mitchell absolutely dominated him. And every fight before that was pretty much the exact same, where Mitchell's going out there. He is landing takedowns. He's got that style of wrestling where, one, it's chain wrestling. The cardio is insane for this guy. And if he gets you down, he can actually hold you down. And that's where I think the difference is going to be. The takedown defense of Dan Ige doesn't necessarily hold up. And it's just Mitchell's going to be shooting nonstop. He has a 3.26 takedown average per 15 minutes. That is very high. And again, he just doesn't stop. He's going to have the size here. He's 5'10" versus what, 5'7", 5'8" for Dan Ige. So it is the size that is going to be a factor here. Size matters when we're talking about wrestling. Bryce Mitchell is a big 145er. And that's just how I see the fight going. I really want to pick Dan Ige. If the fight stays standing, Dan Ige is definitely the better, the cleaner, the more technical striker. He hits harder. But we saw with Bryce Mitchell in his last win against Edson Barbosa, he knocked down Edson Barbosa. That's a very difficult thing to do. I did not think Bryce Mitchell was capable of doing something like that. So maybe he has sneaky power in the hands. I do think, again, Dan Ige definitely has the striking edge, but I don't want to discount Bryce Mitchell's striking. And again, it's just that wrestling, that nonstop pressure. Submissions are very good. He does have a twister submission in the UFC, one of just, I believe, 3 to ever happen in UFC history. So we have here, let's go Bryce. I'm fading Bryce for some reason because Ige has some nasty hands, not going to lie. That is the clear difference here. It's Dan Ige has the striking. It's Bryce has the wrestling. What do you want to back? Of course, you want to back the guy with the better striking, and Dan Ige, that is more exciting. But Bryce Mitchell's wrestling is just nonstop pressure. It is Khabib-esque. It's not Khabib level. It's just that style that is super annoying. It's like Malkoun going in there against Cody Brundage. He's going to land 10 takedowns. It's going to be disgusting. But he's capable of doing it for all 3 rounds, and that's a problem. Bryce by sub, I don't see it happening that way just because, like I said, Dan Ige is a very good grappler. I do believe he is a black belt, so I do believe that he's going to be able to defend against the submissions of Bryce Mitchell. So I do have Bryce Mitchell winning this fight by decision. I could be wrong, and if Dan Ige wins, I'm going to feel like an absolute idiot, but I'm going with Bryce Mitchell to win this one. You're seeing the line movement up to -210. It's happening for a reason. People are backing Bryce Mitchell. It does open up some opportunity to get Dan Ige at +175 and maybe even greater than that by the time Saturday rolls around. But for now, it's got to be Bryce Mitchell. Yes, Bryce by sub. I might put something on that. The odds are probably going to be very good there. I think they're probably expecting this fight to go to decision. I am at least. So Bryce by decision is going to be a little bit more juice. Bryce by sub is going to have some nice value to it. So yeah, maybe you sprinkle a little bit on there. So great co-main event. Can't wait for that one. And then we have the main event of the night. And, you look at the two names. You got Rafael Fiziev taking on Mateusz Gamrot. I believe it's number 6 ranked Rafael Fiziev, and it's number 7 ranked Mateusz Gamrot. So you're getting two very high-level 155ers. You look at those two names, and you instantly think this could be an absolute barn burner. This could be fight of the night. Then you kind of start digging into it a little bit. What are we actually going to get here? Because two truly elite guys. Let's start there. Two truly elite guys, like I said, minus number 6 versus number 7. Right now, you have Rafael Fiziev minus 155. You have Mateusz Gamrot plus 130. That line has definitely moved a little bit. On the Fiziev side, I believe it opened closer to a pick'em. Fiziev now up to minus 155. Both guys, very good for the division. Both guys have very credible wins. We've seen Fiziev go in there. He beat Moicano. He beat Bobby Green. He beat Brad Riddell. He beat RDA, which is that's something we really want to look into a little bit here. And he nearly beat Justin Gaethje. I know people are going to go back and say, the hype train got derailed by Justin Gaethje. Dude, go back and watch that fight. That was razor thin. He almost won that fight. Justin Gaethje just started to take over a little bit. I think Fiziev got a little cocky. I think he really believed he was the better striker. And once he started kind of making it more of a brawl, Justin just started taking over, landing massive shots. But Fiziev was able to eat those shots and just keep coming forward. So it's still, I thought it aged really well. Justin Gaethje, obviously one of the best 155ers out there, probably. And then obviously you're talking about one of the best strikers at 155. Fiziev was hanging toe to toe with this guy. Then you look at Gamrot, Arman Tsarukyan. Like, who has the better resume? Arman Tsarukyan, Jalen Turner, Diego Ferreira. Gamrot has some very high-level names. I didn't think he beat Arman Tsarukyan. You could even argue he didn't beat Jalen Turner. I do think he edged that one out, in my opinion. But both guys, super high-level fighters, very good names. And really, what's going to happen here is Mateusz Gamrot. He's one of these guys, as we're talking about Bryce Mitchell, as we're talking about Jacob Malkoun, he is a non-stop wrestler. And he's a damn good one at that. 31% takedown accuracy, not great. I'd say it's pretty good. But the thing is, he's just going to shoot nonstop. Like, he's going to get 20 takedowns in a fight, no problem. And generally, his cardio checks out. Like, we've seen him go 5 rounds. He has that win over Arman Tsarukyan. That was a 5-round fight. Cardio seemed to check out there. He hung tough with a guy who could be a future champion, in my opinion, in Arman Tsarukyan. I think his striking is actually a little bit underrated. It's not great. It's pretty good. It kind of catches you off guard a little bit. You don't think he's going where he is, but he turns around. He's a decent striker. But then the biggest thing here for me, guys, is that we talk about how good of a wrestler Gamrot is. It's the fact that Rafael Fiziev has strong takedown defense. I think the comparable is there. In the RDA fight, RDA shot for about 17 takedowns. He was only able to land 2 or 3 of those. Granted, he was able to rack up a little bit of control time. That worries me a little bit, but Fiziev works his way back to his feet, stuffs the majority of the takedowns, the vast majority of the takedowns. He does boast a 90% overall takedown defense. So if he's able to do that, and this is staying standing, who's the better striker of the two? It's Rafael Fiziev, and it's not even close. He's got wicked fast hands. He's got killer power. He mixes it up. Head, body, head, body. It's just between the two guys, Gamrot versus Fiziev on the feet. I just don't think it's going to be close. And when we've seen the comparable in RDA, I think it's going to be a very similar style fight where RDA turned into a wrestler. That's what you want to do against this guy because you don't want to be standing with Fiziev, but I just don't think it's going to work here. I don't think it's going to work here. I think Gamrot is probably going to land a couple of takedowns. You probably are going to see a little bit of control time. Maybe Gamrot's able to edge 1 or 2 rounds, but overall, I think Fiziev can win, the majority of the rounds. I think he can win 3 out of the 5, or I think he could even find the finish later on in this fight. Round 4, round 5, that's kind of the spot that I'm looking into. So I am going with Rafael Fiziev to win this fight. I am going with a round 4 knockout. I think it's worth noting Gamrot has never been finished in his professional career, but he has been knocked down 4 times in the UFC. So I'm not saying the chin is completely suspect, but he's been dropped multiple times in 4 different fights. And Fiziev hits like an absolute truck. So the official prediction is going to be Rafael Fiziev. It is going to be round 4 knockout. Sprinkle a little bit on round 4. Sprinkle a little bit on round 5. That's how I see the play. And best bet number 3, I am going to go with Fiziev to win this fight. It's minus 150 for me right now. I think you play that outright. I think that's a solid money line play. In a guy in Fiziev who I just really believe just stylistically it's going to make sense here, where he has the takedown defense to keep the fight standing. He is going to pick apart Mateusz Gamrot. The later this fight goes, I think Gamrot fights a way heavier game plan. Like if he's shooting for 20 takedowns and he's getting stuffed, and maybe he does get a couple takedowns, holding down Fiziev is not going to be easy. I think Gamrot is going to slowly fade. Fiziev is going to be there, finds a round 4 knockout. Joey says, I took Gamrot by decision because he could get knocked down, and Charles Fiziev and lure him to the ground. It's an interesting play. I mean, I can see people taking Gamrot. I mean, he has played spoiler before. I don't think he beat Arman Tsarukyan, but he just has a way to make that fight look very close. But another comp we have too is against Beneil Dariush. You know, Beneil Dariush had no trouble really stuffing those takedowns when it stayed standing on the feet. Dariush is a good striker, but I don't think he's Fiziev's level, to be honest. So if Dariush is able to do it, I think Fiziev is definitely live to get that finish in round 4. That's what I'm going with. Sprinkle that round 4, sprinkle that round 5. I think both are very playable. But overall, I think it's Fiziev to win this one. Money line minus 150. That is what I'm going with. And guys, that's UFC Vegas 79. That is the full card breakdown. Sprinkled in 3 best bets. We're going with Vidal and Mizuki to start out the night. Parlay both of those. It's greasy, but it's a fun way to start out the first 2 fights of the card. It's minus 110. I don't hate that parlay. I have Malkoun by decision plus 135, his most likely path to victory. Brundage did go to decision in his last fight, so that's reassuring. And then I have Fiziev money line minus 150. Those are the 3 best bets, guys. Again, premium content. Make sure to check out the Patreon. You're going to see all of these predictions. You're going to see the confidence levels. You're going to see the entire betting guide, early line movement tracker. You're going to have access to betting splits. It is just a all one-stop shop for betting every UFC event. And it's a very reasonable price. So make sure to check out the premium content. Link is going to be in the description, guys. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe, because we are going to be doing this every Wednesday night, breaking down every UFC event. And that brings me to my next point. We do not have a UFC event next weekend, so we'll be back the weekend after that. But there are Dana White's Contender Series fights going on. We will have a video on the channel, so make sure to check that out. And that's going to do it for me, guys. Thanks for tuning in